All right, so guys, when we left off last week, I told you we were going to go across the pond.
All the way across the pond.
Going across the pond to Europe. Talk about foreign policy. Okay? We will do a lot of that this semester on foreign policy. Okay? And this is one that you will need to remember for a long, long time. Because I will be making reference to the 5-Power Treaty for months. Okay? Remember when we talked about World War I and how awful it was, and how many people died, and how many people suffered amputations and casualties from the war? Okay? Guys, the world wanted to do some things to prevent it from ever happening again. After all, it was the war to end all wars. No more wars like this, okay? So we're going to see a series of pacts, agreements, treaties that are signed to try and prevent war from happening again. So this 5-Power Treaty is just one of several, okay? Now, I'm not going to talk about all of them. I'm just going to talk about some of them. But with this one, you've got the U.S., Great Britain, France, Japan, and Italy. And the goal here is to limit the size of our navies. Limit the number of capital ships and sizes of our ships. Now, if you're not aware, guys, when you measure the size of a ship, you measure it through what's called the amount of water it displaces. Yes? So when you get in the bathtub, some of us will displace more water than others. Okay? So we're going to shrink the size of our navies, our warships. This is called disarmament. Reducing the number of weapons. The idea here is the fewer weapons you have, the less likely you're to go to war, Lily. The more weapons you have, maybe the more likely you go to war. So let's shrink the size of our navies, and maybe we won't go to war again. Now, I have written on here the first successful disarmament treaty in history. It's wonderful. We're thinking like human beings that want to live instead of die in war. Right? Now, look at these 5 countries. One of them is going to be the first to violate this treaty. Who do you think is going to be the first one to violate this treaty? What you know about history? Huh? USA? No, it's not going to be us. Japan would be a likely prospect, knowing what. It's the least likely one up here.
It's
France.
They folded the first
Well, listen. The reason why France is going to be the first one to violate this is because to who comes to power in 1922 in Italy? Benito Mussolini, who's a fascist. Now, Mussolini, listen, talks about building a new Roman Empire. Now, was France at one point part of the Roman Empire? Yeah, so the French, out of self-preservation, are thinking to themselves, all right, we got this nut job on our southern border. We're shrinking the size of our navy right now. And he's talking about building a new Roman Empire. Maybe we should stop shrinking our navy. Reasonable? All right, we're giving some credit to the French here. That won't happen often, so take note. Okay? Now, is it successful? Well, guys, there's no war between 1919 and 1931. So, is this the reason why? Or is the reason why because people didn't want to do that again? I don't know. How do you quantify that? Okay, so we don't know for sure. So this says, the notes say, provides for a decade of peace. I don't know if this is the reason for peace. I don't think it is, okay? But maybe we can give credit to it, okay? Now, here's the problem with this. If France violates this treaty, are we all going to go to war to enforce it? How do you enforce this treaty? Huh? Yeah, you could do economic, punishments, but what are we trying to avoid in the first place? Short of war, conflict, right? So if we start attacking them economically, we're creating a situation where we have conflict. You know what I mean? So what you have to think about this, stop writing for a second. What you have to think about with these guys, if you make these treaties, is there any way to enforce them? Is there any backbone to them? Or do they just make you feel warm and fuzzy about yourself and think that you're doing something good for humanity? Do they actually work? Is there any way to enforce it? And the only thing enforcing this is a moral opinion, okay? A world opinion about France violating. Now, Japan is starting to industrialize and they want to become more powerful. Okay, so what this treaty allows for us to do is to say, look, these other countries don't want to go to war. We're all shrinking our navies, so we don't have to pay attention to what other countries are doing because they're all following the rules, right? So we can just stick our heads in the sands and not worry about what the rest of the world is up to because we have a treaty. Treaty. Piece of paper. Doesn't mean anything. There's nothing to enforce it, guys. Now, if they said, if one of you guys violates this, we're all going to go to war with you, then it might work. But if it doesn't say that, it doesn't mean anything. You understand? Surgeons. Maybe it's my voice. Okay. Now, from time to time, we're going to check in on Japan. All right? See what's going on. Remember our immigration policy towards National Origins Act in 1924? What did it say to the Asian people? None.
Bye-bye.
Okay? All right. Now, Japan has a problem. They're an island. Which means they have limited what? Natural resources. Okay, so if you want to build an empire, if you want to build a great, powerful nation, you need more resources. Okay, this is what the British got really good at. Okay, by taking over other countries and using their resources. This is called mercantilism, yes? Okay. So we got to keep an eye on Japan. Now, we already know Japan controls the Korean Peninsula from the Russo-Japanese War, okay, from 1903 on, okay? But the Japanese are going to want more. All right, coming back across the pond. Who's the new president? Oh, God. Who's the new president? From Ohio. We're in trouble. We're in trouble. His name's freaking Harding. Remember we studied Harding's cabinet? The Ohio gang? Albert Fall, Harry Daugherty, all that. Okay? Now, Harding has 4 things he wants to do. Harding, just by looking at this, you can tell he's either a Republican or a Democrat. By looking at this, you can tell he's a what? He's a Republican. Republicans are always talking about lowering taxes, aren't they? They're always talking about less government spending, aren't they? They're talking about it, but they ain't doing it. Okay? Just look at the Trump years. Just look at the Bush years. They cut spending? No. So I quit giving them money. Right? I told you that. Now, tariffs. That might remind you of the former president, Mr. Trump. Okay. And then aid to disabled soldiers and farmers, which both parties can agree on. Okay. So these are the four big topics that Harding wants to cover. So he calls a special session of Congress. They come in and he talks to them and says, this is what we want to do. What we're going to do. Get this Woodrow Wilson crap out of here. Okay? Get this progressive stuff out of here. All right? So we're going to break down each of these four. Okay? Now, what I'm going to put up here next, not on the test. It's boring. It's economics. Boring. And every time I put it on the test, people missed it, so I just took it off the test. Trying to create some equity in this place. Okay, thank you for laughing. All right. All right. So, guys, we're going to change the budget procedures in this country with what's called the Bureau of Budget. Now, guys, when we wanted to build a new ship in this country, Congress used to propose, let's build a new ship. And then they'd say, how much does it cost? They said, okay, it costs $2 million to build this new ship. And you know what they voted on? They voted on that new ship. They didn't vote on a $800 billion defense budget for the next year. They voted on each individual item of spending. It's a novel idea. Now, if you want to spend a lot of money, it's a lot easier to just put a budget together and say, okay, what do you want in the budget? What do you want in the budget? What do you want in the budget? What do you need? What do you want? And then we'll put it all in the budget, and then we'll vote on it. And that way we can see in one place where all the money is spent, in one budget. The Bureau of Budget did that. We changed how we did it. So all requests went into a single budget for congressional approval. Okay? Now, fact of the matter is, this country has not passed a federal budget in more than 10 years. So right before Christmas, we saw the $1.7 trillion omnibus package. Okay, that was to continue funding the government into the next year. Obviously, guys, we have hit the debt limit. We will be unable to pay our bills come June. Okay, unless we increase the debt limit. So, guys, we don't pass budgets anymore. We just spend continuing spending resolutions. We need this much money. Just spend it. Okay. As far as passing a budget, it's been a long time. Okay. So that's one thing. And then the GAO, or General Accounting Office, was created as well to track this money, to see how it was being spent, making sure it was spent legally, and try to recommend economies to be efficient with their tax dollars. How we do it. The GAO is still around. Okay, the Bureau of Budget's still around today. Okay, I had a neighbor of mine studied international business at Wichita State and now works for the General Accounting Office in Chicago. Okay, still a thing. All right, good. Not on the test. So let's get into those four areas that Harding wanted to hit. The first one up there was tariffs. Okay, we're going green. We're going green dollars. We're going money. Green. Talking money. Okay. Now, I assume everybody knows what a tariff is, but you may not. So a tariff is a tax on imports. Okay. Now, when when you tax an import, who pays the tax? The consumer pays the tax. So, these dang Canadians, they figured how to grow wheat in the summertime in Canada. And they grew a lot of it. Now, there's not many people in Canada. So they have all this land. They grow all this wheat. And they got more than enough to feed their people with it. So they start dumping their wheat on American markets. And what happens to the price of wheat for our wheat farmers in America when all this Canadian wheat comes in? Yeah, the price of wheat goes down per bushel. And our farmers are having a hard time making money competing with this cheap Canadian wheat. So the government is going to protect them. This is called protectionism, protecting American farmers with a tariff of 28% on Canadian farm products. Again, guys, the consumer pays for this. Following? So they dump their wheat in here, we jack up the price, government jacks up the price, and so our farmers can charge more for their wheat and can make a living. Guys, this is the bad thing about farming. When you have a bumper crop, like everybody grows a bunch of wheat and a bunch of corn that year, had good rain, everything worked out perfectly, there were no bugs, bumper crops. So you got a surplus of wheat and corn. What happens to the price? You got more supply, price goes down. You don't make any money because it's so cheap. Then you have a bad year of crops, so does everybody else. What happens to the price? It goes up, but you don't have much to sell. Kind of a catch-22, isn't it? Kind of stinks for farmers. Okay? Now, what we also started to see is that other companies were sending products into the United States, Europeans, that were competing with our products. And so they asked for protection too. So the Ford-Macumber Act gave industrialists protection they wanted from European goods. This may be the first time I've ever taught this on a dress down day. Huh? Well, I'll still do it because you'll know the answer to this, but you won't be able to look at your shoes. Okay. We're going to talk about shoes today. Okay. Vincent, what kind of shoes are those? Are they Sperry's? Nope. Anybody wearing Sperry's? All right. Okay. On a normal day, how many guys are wearing Sperry's? Okay. Holy crap. Okay. Now, Thomas, you remember how much you paid for those? Mom got them? Yeah. 60. Does anybody know how much they paid for their Sperry's? Huh? Say 90? Anybody else? 75? Okay.
We don't have those.
Yeah, but there's one of those options that are dress shoes aren't comfy. I say comfy every day.
Do you not have comfy dress shoes? No.
Not really.
So, do you not
I
go like
I only wear them when I buy
dress
dresses.
That's supposed to be Mr. Right. Silly.
I'm sorry.
It's not Florida nigger and Texas.
Okay, what's this? This is Brit. Okay. Now, for the sake of argument, we're going to talk about Sperry's. Okay. For the sake of argument, You're gonna think that Sperry's are not made in Vietnam. Where are yours made, Thomas? Take them off.
I think it says me.
Stink up the joint. Ooh, DR. Okay. All right. Now, for the sake of argument, your Sperry's are made in London. Okay. Now, just based on those people that raised their hand in here, they sell a whole lot of shoes in the United States. Okay. And Emma paid $90 for her pair. We got 75 over here. So let's just go $80 a pair. Okay. Now, what would you call a Sperry that you guys wear for school shoes? You could call that like a casual dress shoe. Casual dress shoe? Okay. Well, let's say there's a company out here in Nebraska called New Balance. Okay. Now, what kind of shoes does New Balance make? Tennis shoes, walking shoes, that kind of thing, right? Okay. Well, let's say New Balance is an American company, made in America shoes, and they want to get into the casual dress shoe market. Okay. But in order to hire American employees to make these shoes using American rawhide, leather, good leather, American leather, okay, they cannot make a casual dress shoe at New Balance and sell it for less than $90 a pair. So, government comes in, they're going to protect New Balance. You're going to put a tariff on these shoes of, say, 20% or so, and you've got $100 a pair for Sperry's. Now, anybody just get priced out of the market for Sperry's? I'm like, I'm not spending $100 on these shoes. Okay, so Sperry's going to make fewer shoes, right? But New Balance is going to make some shoes for $90, and maybe you buy those shoes. Okay, is this good for America? Okay, good point. Okay, now what happens back here at the factory at Sperry? They're not, well, they could do that. They're not selling as many shoes, right? So they slow down, right? They're going to lay some people off. Okay, so Sperry's headed down. Now, I don't know if you've ever heard of this company out in Silicon Valley, America, called Dell. You ever heard of Dell? Yeah, they make computers, right? I don't know if you knew this either, that people in London love Dell computers. And they sell like hotcakes over there. But because of the slowdown of shoe manufacturing in London, you have people that are losing their jobs in London that don't have enough money to buy Dell computers. So Dell sells fewer computers to Londoners. What happens back at the factory at Dell? People get laid off and have less money to buy Sperry's or New Balance. The United States of America is the largest consumer in the world. We consume more than any other country per capita by quite a margin. Any of you guys have big screen TV that broke in the last 5 years or so? What'd you do with it? Did you take it and get it repaired? Or did you throw it away and go buy a new one? I mean, why do we even have TV repairmen anymore? You know? Just throw it in the landfill and go to freaking Sam's and get a new one. You get a 65-inch for under $500. So here's our dilemma, people. We can, as consumers, rely on foreign goods made with cheap labor, which means our dollar, when we go to buy things, stretches a lot farther Or we can institute protectionist policies, force our businesses to manufacture in the United States, forcing them to pay American wages, which would create a lot more blue-collar working jobs in this country, but everything would be more expensive. So, you want to be able to go to Walmart and Sam's and Costco and buy cheap crap made in China, and almost all the jobs that you guys will have when you graduate from schools, whatever you do in schools, most of you will be providing a service for somebody. Most of us will never make or create anything. We will be providing a service. Most of our jobs in this country, service industry. So, do we want to bring those jobs back to the United States? So this is what Trump was trying to do, right? With China. So he cut the corporate income tax rate from 35% to 21%, saying to American corporations, if you stay here, we're cutting your taxes. You'll be able to make more money without paying foreign labor. You can pay Americans that money and still compete internationally. That's what he was trying to do. Because when Trump started talking about tariffs, okay, against the Chinese, first thing you fear is a trade war. Okay? But guys, we have almost a $600 billion trade deficit with China. In other words, we buy $600 billion more of their crap than they buy of our crap. So Trump's saying to them, listen, we're putting tariffs on your stuff until you start buying more of our stuff. Now, on the surface, I'm like, I like that. I think that's good. But history tells us that these tariffs are one of the main causes of the Great Depression. And I've been teaching this for a long time, so I'm like a little weary, right? I'm like, tariffs? I don't know, man. That can get into a sticky situation. Get in a trade war. It hurts the whole economy, the world economy. Especially when Americans stop consuming. You stop buying Sperry shoes made in the Dominican Republic. That's already a poor country, right? So the people that are living in Dominican making your shoes, they're getting some pay for that. Not as much somebody working in this country would get. They're getting something out of that. We start putting tariffs on those shoes from Dominican, that dude loses his job. And they're not going to be able to buy any American products either. Not that the Dominican imports a lot of American stuff, but, you know, the big thing is food. That's our biggest export, is food. Okay. Boeing exports a lot of planes. Yeah. So some people believe in free trade, just wide open, just free trade. Okay. It is good for the consumer in this country, guys. Free trade is great for the consumer. But what do we call that whole part of the country, the Rust Belt? U.S. Steel. I mean, it's nothing what it used to be. You know what I mean? Ford, GM, all these auto manufacturers. A lot of them do a lot of stuff overseas or in Mexico and south of the border. Okay, so we lose those good paying blue collar jobs for people that don't go to college, okay, that know how to work hard, okay, but we're sending them overseas. So it's a catch-22, right? Again, what do you guys want? You want good American paying jobs, making stuff? There once was a country named Spain that went to the New World, into what we call Latin America and Central America. And the Spanish hooked up with these people called the Incas, right? You remember the Incas? And the Incas had a bunch of what? And gold. And the Spanish took all that gold and they brought it back to Spain. And you know what Spain's neighbors wanted? Spanish neighbors wanted some of that gold. And so what they did is they started making things for the Spanish to buy with that gold. So all these countries around Spain sold Spain all that stuff, and Spain spent all that gold. And then Spain ran out of gold. And then Spain failed to be relevant. Is Spain relevant today on the world stage? They used to be a powerhouse. You understand? We have been a powerhouse for the last 150 years. Will we remain a powerhouse if we don't manufacture hardly anything in this country anymore? We ship it all out. Will we still have substance as a nation? I don't know. You know what I mean? These are like serious questions we have to think about in this country. It's great to go to Walmart, guys. You know, every year I have a baseball banquet, and I like come up with these awards for my players. I'm like, I should frame these to make them look nice. So we go to Walmart, dude. Like 8 by 10 frames, like $2.50 a piece. Cheap crap. I mean, they're not, don't drop it. It's going to break. You know what I mean? But it's a frame and it looks nice. It's $2.50 a piece. Now, if that was manufactured in the United States, that would cost me probably $12. But somebody would have a good, decent job building under our labor laws. You know what? Now, so on the test, I'm going to ask you this question. How do tariffs clog trade? Now, you could put Europe will retaliate with their own tariffs, and that would be partially correct. But remember this, we are the #1 consumer. So when the United States stops buying your products, those countries have an inability to buy our products. Does that make sense? Can you explain that to me on the test? When the United States stops buying products from foreign countries, they have an inability to buy our products because they're making less money. Does that make sense? Okay. Bam. Taxes. So, Mellon, who is the Secretary of what? Under 3 presidents? With 2 L's? What? No. Treasury. Andrew Mellon, Secretary of Treasury. Under Harding, Coolidge, and Hoover. With 2 L's. Mellon, the Secretary of Treasury, pushes for a repeal of wartime taxes. Guys, if you scroll back, now guys, remember the income tax wasn't created until the 16th Amendment. There have been times where the income tax in this country has been 80%. Okay? During World War I, it went to 65%. So if you made $1 million in 1980, $650,000 goes to the federal government. You make $10,000, $6,500 goes to the government. So, well, good thing you got somebody like Mellon around, all right? So Mellon says we need to repeal the excess profits tax because, guys, the companies that made all the boots and the guns and all that for the war, they were making big profits and they got taxed excess profits. And then the wealthy tax rate from 65 to 50%, Mellon wanted to go to 25%. Now pay attention. Dumb. By 1924, they're going to lower lower the wealthy tax rate to 25%, which historically is very low in this country. Remember when the Depression hits in 1929? One of the things to spur economic activity is to cut taxes. People keep more of their money, they spend it, right? Well, guys, taxes are already really low in 1924, as they will be in 1929 when the stock market crashes. So there's not a lot of room to move taxes down. There's not a lot of wiggle room there, okay? Now, Mellon didn't want to cut taxes for the lower and middle class, but Congress wants to get elected, and there's a lot more lower and middle class people than there are than wealthy, so they're going to cut taxes for everybody. You understand? Okay.
Why did he not want to?
Because they weren't paying that much to begin with. Like, Vincent, you're paying 10%. I can cut it to 8,
Please.
but you're still going to get most of your money back. Yeah. So taxes, okay. Now, both sides agreed that they wanted to help veterans of World War I, okay? And this is called the Adjusted Compensation Act. So it's an insurance policy. You can't get this money until 1945. How much is your insurance policy? Well, every day you spend overseas, you got $1.25 towards this insurance policy. Every day you spent in the military at home, you get $1. Okay? That's how much you get for 2 years, 1 year overseas. That's how much money you're going to get in 1945. Okay? But some people needed their money sooner than that. So vets were able to borrow up to 25% of this. So watch this. Okay? 25%. You'd be up $205. In 1919, 1920, would $200 get you a new set of clothes and into an apartment to where you could go look for a job? Absolutely. Okay, so a lot of veterans borrowed against this insurance policy. This is also known as the bonus bill. Okay, so the Adjusted Compensation Act and the bonus bill are the same thing. What's another term for the Adjusted Compensation Act? The bonus bill. What's another term for the bonus bill? Are you with me on this? Think you can answer a multiple choice question on that? Like, what's the other term for the Adjusted Compensation Act? A, B, C, or D, and C is bonus bill. Do you get that right? Giving you hints for the test. Yes? Right, Joanna? Joanna, you look forward to history class every day? Thanks. What is wrong with you? Do you not like knowledge? Why? Do you feel too much pressure? Is it hard? So I think it's really about attitude.
Wow, that was
No, let me talk. I'm talking to Joanne. So Joanne, if you want to have a good time, you need to have a good attitude. And if you go into the day saying, I don't want to learn, this is going to be boring, this is not interesting, then guess what? It's going to be boring and uninteresting. But if you go into the day saying, you know what knowledge I can gain today, I'm going to have a good attitude. Whether I'm really into this or not, I'm going to try and have a good attitude. Next thing you know, you're having a good time.
I think it's a good thing. I just don't have like any passion,
Okay.
like any subject.
So what are you going to do with your life?
Gaslighting myself into becoming a biologist and geneticist.
but that's fun.
You think that's interesting?
Yeah.
Well, there you go. All right. Now we're having fun. Okay. Everybody understand this? Now, guys, this is going to come up again. When the Depression hits, these veterans, they're going to want all this money. You understand? And the government's going to say, sorry. And there's going to be violence. But I'm saving that for another day. We will talk about the bonus bill again. Okay? All right. Peace.